Hello, or welcome back to our lecture series. Today we will be talking about the module 19, and today we are looking at the citric acid cycle. Of course, the citric acid cycle is a very important, or much more a central cycle in metabolism of all fuel molecules, and we're going to see that in the first part of this lecture. Now let's take it up immediately without wasting time. Aerobic metabolism. Let's talk about aerobic metabolism. Of course, in chapter 15, when we introduced intermediary metabolism, so metabolism is the sum total of those chemical reactions that take place in a living organism, and that metabolism is divided into catabolism and anabolism. Catabolism is just breaking down of biomolecules into simpler ones, whereas anabolism is a building up from simpler molecules to a big one. So today we'll be looking at the aerobic metabolism. Now, when we talked about glycolysis, that was an anaerobic catabolism, whereby a process whereby there's metabolism without any oxygen involved. So the key processes that play an important role in aerobic metabolism involving oxygen involve three important things we're going to be talking about in sequence. In fact, we're going to talk about the citric acid cycle, and in the next chapter we'll be talking about the last two. So the citric acid cycle is a central metabolic pathway, very central, because it connects both catabolism, which is breakdown, and anabolism, which is build up. It also is called many names we're going to see in the next few slides. And then electron transport. Electron transport is a series of oxidation and reduction reactions by which electrons are moved from one carrier to the other until they are moved from these nutrients and passed on to oxygen. Like I said, in aerobic metabolism, oxygen is involved. So that's what we mean by electron transport. Electrons are transported between different carriers, and carriers are moved until they are moved to oxygen. And then oxygen will now be reduced to water molecule. We're going to see that, as that plays an important role here. And then finally, in aerobic metabolism is oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative phosphorylation is the process of making ATP, whereby ATP can be made from ADP plus PI will make ATP. Now, this is different from the type of ATP that was made in glycolysis. Remember, we talked about it, which is the substrate level phosphorylation, whereby ATP is made by the transfer of phosphate group from one substrate to another. Now, in this case, this is happening in what? It involves oxygen, and it is happening in the mitochondria. That is where it is happening. And now the energy for this thing the energy for the formation of this ATP is driven by the pH gradient, which is usually developed as a result of the movement of proton or hydrogen ions in between the mitochondrial membranes. So this happens within the mitochondria, and it's as a result of this electron transport that the generation of this ATP takes place. So these three things are very much more connected, as we're going to see. So if we're going to be looking at a snapshot of metabolism again, remember, I said again, citric acid cycle is a central metabolic pathway. Every other catabolic pathway will feed into it, no matter where it is coming from. So we use a particular important word in biochemistry to describe what you call amphibolic. Amphibolic means a pathway that can be part of both catabolism and anabolism, which it is much. Now look at what happens here. When fuel molecules are broken down into nutrients, particularly, they're broken down into smaller molecules rather. Those smaller molecules usually get back to acetyl-CoA. Those acetyl-CoA enters like tricarboxylic acid cycle. And also, the tricarboxylic acid cycle will also feed into anabolic pathway. If you want to synthesize fatty acid, you start from what? You start from acetyl-CoA, which is also part of what? Tricarboxylic acid cycle. So it acts in both ways. That's why we describe it as being amphibolic. It's also called the Krebs cycle or the tricarboxylic acid cycle, TCA. You're going to see me, I'll be using the TCA more often. Now, again, like I said, it takes place in the mitochondria. It takes place inside the mitochondrial matrix. Inside the mitochondrial matrix is what we call the juicy part, or the jelly-like part of the mitochondria that contains the enzymes of tricarboxylic acid cycle. Now look at what happens here in the first place. Remember, we talked about it earlier in the first part of metabolism, chapter 15. There are 3 stages of metabolism. In the first stage, molecules are broken down into their simplest unit, and this is now broken down to release smaller molecule, the common intermediate called acetyl-CoA. See here, glucose is broken down to pyruvate. Pyruvate is converted to this. We've done this already in glycolysis. We've not done fatty acid, but fatty acid is also broken down again to acetyl-CoA, and amino acid can be broken down to acetyl-CoA. Now, in this breaking down too, each of them result to generation of electrons. These electrons will now be transferred. We're coming to that. Now, all this common intermediate that is acetyl-CoA, can all of them, acetyl-CoA, fit into the citric acid cycle. Inside the citric acid cycle again, it is broken down and result to generation of much more number of electrons. Now, the electrons generated here and the ones generated here, all of them are being carried by 2 important coenzymes, the nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide and flavin adenine dinucleotide. These guys act as these electron carriers, which they now transfer from different proteins until they get it to oxygen. Oxygen is now doing what is now reduced to water molecule. And the energy used in doing this, in this respiratory transport chain, is used to synthesize ATP from ATP in stage 3. So this is stage 1. We are not talking about stage 2, but particularly as involves carbohydrates. And then after that, we're going to be talking about this in the next chapter, which is in module 20, chapter 20. That is what we're going to be talking about here. So but before we do that, let's understand again. Some of you might have taken this in biology, but I give you benefit of that if you have not. Let's look at the ultrastructure of the mitochondria. The mitochondria itself is optimized in ultrastructure to fit in the function, the function of the tricarboxylic acid cycle. Now, it is made up of 2 membranes, the outer membrane and the inner membrane. Now, let me show you what it looks like. Now, the outer membrane is the outermost part of the mitochondria. This is the outer membrane. Now, it has the inner membrane. The inner membrane is folded. Look at the inner membrane. The inner membrane is folded into what we call, this is the inner membrane. Now, the inner membrane is folded into what we call crystal that provides a high surface area for what? For these reactions, for the reactions of tricarboxylic acid cycle and electron transport chain to take place. So this infolding of this inner membrane is what we actually call crystal, or crystal when there are more than one. This inner folding, which provides that high surface area for these reactions to take place. Now, inside this mitochondria, you have a juice or a jelly-like part that is contained in the walls of the inner membrane. This juice is where we find the enzymes of glycolysis. That juice is actually called the mitochondrial matrix. Mitochondrial matrix. Or just say matrix. You don't need to say mitochondrial matrix. The mitochondria is inside this matrix that we have. They are housing enzymes of the TCA. All those enzymes of the TCA class we're going to see. So it's jelly-like, or you can say juice-like, is what with juice-like apartment that contains those enzymes of TCA cycle. Now, like I said, we have the crystal, which is the infolding of the inner membrane. We have the inner membrane, we have the outer membrane, and we have the matrix. So these are, and now another important thing we need to know is that in between the outer membrane, this is the outer membrane, and this is the inner membrane, you have a space. This space is what we call the intermembrane space. And we're going to see the function of the intermembrane space by the time we get into module 20 and begin to understand the electron transport chain. Intermembrane space. This space is where protons are usually pumped to, hydrogen ions are pumped to. And at the end of the day, there will be build up of a proton potential or pH potential between the inner membrane, the intermembrane space, and the inner membrane that drives the synthesis of ATP. So this is the ultrastructure of the mitochondria, and I expect you to know this structure and to give it to me if I request that in the exams. Now let's look at the reactions of the electron transport chain. The reactions are 8 main reactions of electron transport chain that we're going to be looking at. The reactions are listed, but however, I'm going to go straight to the pathway and show you the reactions and what is happening there. And then on to the left, we're going to be taking notes. Now, what are the notes we're going to be taking? We're going to be watching out for what are the pathways that generate reducing equivalents of NADH or FADH2. Which one generates any phosphate? Is it ATP or GTP? And that is exactly what we're going to be looking at. Now, let's see what happens here. After glycolysis, glycolysis produces pyruvate. Pyruvate can now enter. Pyruvate is very permeable to the mitochondrial wall. The pyruvate enters the mitochondrial wall and then gets inside the mitochondrial matrix. Inside the mitochondrial matrix is where you have this enzyme, the pyruvate dehydrogenase. We talked about this when we talked about glycolysis. Now, pyruvate is converted to acetyl-CoA by the enzyme pyruvate dehydrogenase. The pyruvate dehydrogenase is out, and in this case, again, look at what happens here. What happens here is an oxidation-reduction reaction again, whereby the oxidized form of NADH comes to accept 2 hydrogen, gets reduced, whereas, and then there is also a decarboxylation of this guy. You see, this is, and it will now, and then there is an addition of the coenzyme or CoAsh, which now forms acetyl-CoA. Acetyl-CoA is the first substrate of tricarboxylic acid cycle or the citric acid cycle. So this is not part of the citric acid cycle per se, but it's important to understand that this reaction is also taking place in the mitochondria. And it's important that we're going to take stock of that, because I will be needing that particular equivalence that was generated. That equivalence that was generated, we're going to be talking about it very soon. So this is in the mitochondria. Yeah, that didn't come out well. I think that space, I can write that in to conserve the space. Mitochondria. Here you go. All right. So this is also taking place in the mitochondria. But now we're going to be getting, so the moment this thing takes place, it forms acetyl-CoA. Now acetyl-CoA will now begin to, remember, this is a cycle. A cycle means it keeps running, it doesn't break. That's what we call it, a cycle. So the tricarboxylic acid cycle or the citric acid is a cycle that do not break. Let's see what is happening in this reaction. In the first place, acetyl-CoA, now you can get pyruvate from glycolysis. That means you can get acetyl-CoA from glycolysis. That's what it means indirectly. And you can also get this from oxidation of fatty acid as well. In the oxidation of fatty acid, you can also get, if you break fatty acid completely in what we call the beta oxidation, you also get acetyl-CoA. All of them are feeding into the citric acid cycle. Like I told you, it is multifunctional. Accept both different products of, accept different breakdown products of all the fuel molecules as acetyl-CoA as they feed into this cycle. Now let's start in reaction 1. What happens? Look at what happens here. Oxaloacetate, which contains about, this is 4 carbon molecule, joins with acetyl-CoA, which is 2 carbon molecule, in what we call a synthase reaction to form citrate. The enzyme that catalyzes the reaction is called citrate synthase. What it simply does here is joining these two together. That's exactly what happens. If you join 2 carbon plus 4 carbon, you're going to get 6 carbon. Here, citrate is 6 carbon. And this carbon has what? 3 carboxyl group. That's what we call it this is what gives it the name, the tricarboxylic acid cycle. So this is a tricarboxylic acid because it has 3 carboxyl group. So what happens here? Water molecule is used, whereas the CoAsh is being broken off to form the citrate. Now citrate is now quickly isomerized to isocitrate. Iso means isomer of citrate. What simply happened between these two reactions is that here, if you look at this 1, 2, 3, this is in carbon number 2. It has been moved to carbon number 4 in isocitrate. The OH group has been moved. So, and the enzyme that does this is the aconitase. In these two reactions, we do not generate any reducing equivalent, nor use any energy or generate any energy as ATP or GTP or whatever. Now, the next reaction, now we're going to take note of this. In the next reaction, what happens? Isocitrate is now decarboxylated. Look at what is happening here. You're removing a carboxyl group. That means you're removing one carbon, one COO. That's one carbon and two oxygen. And then NADH oxidized comes to be reduced. So what is happening here is the isocitrate is now decarboxylated and done what again? And then oxidized. That's exactly what's happening here. From isocitrate to alpha ketoglutarate. Alpha, in this case, generating NADH. So what it means that in this step, we've generated one NADH. So we're going to be keeping tally of that. So we've gotten one NADH. So we're going to keep tally of that at the end of the day. I'm going to use the color so that we can count it at the end of the day. So step 3 here gives us one NADH. Now isocitrate is now converted again to succinyl-CoA. Look at what's happening here. Again, there's a reducing equivalent being generated here. Another NADH is generated. And again, there is another decarboxylation. That tells you we remove one carbon to form 5 carbon. Count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you remove one carbon again, it's going to be 4. So this is 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. So it is now decarboxylated and oxidized again to succinyl-CoA. That's exactly what is happening here. And this succinyl-CoA gets its CoA from CoH again, which is attached at this carbon to form the thioester bond at this point. Now, succinyl-CoA is now quickly converted to succinate. What happens here? Here, something interesting happens here again. If you look at what is happening here now, succinate means you've broken this thioester bond. That's what just happened there. Breaking of that thioester bond and forming a carboxylate anion. However, some things happen here. Look at what is happening here. A phosphate group comes in here and is used to generate GTP, which is guanosine diphosphate, is converted to GTP. So I'm going to circle this with a different color. Perhaps let me circle it with blue. GTP is an energy currency, and it is easily converted to ATP. So we're going to get one ATP from here. So because GTP is not readily usable by the cells converted immediately to ATP to be the most usable form of the energy currency of the cell. That is what is happening in step what? In step 5. In step 6, succinate is quickly what? Look at what's happening here. And again, succinate again is done what? Is oxidized. Because what is happening here now? Another thing comes in, look at it. Another reducing equivalent comes in, the FAD comes in, oxidized, now reduced to FADH2. Those two hydrogen here will now be added to this guy as H2. Now this guy becomes what? Fumarate. So now, succinate was oxidized to fumarate, whereas FAD was reduced to FADH2. That is what, and the enzyme that does this is called the succinate dehydrogenase. So we've generated one ADH here, generated one, now we're generating what? Oh, I shouldn't circle that one. I should circle, we've generated FADH2 here, which is a formidable reducing equivalent for the electron transport chain. Quickly again, look at what is happening again. Fumarate is quickly converted to what? Malate. What is happening here? Now, hydroxylation reaction. Water molecule is added. Look at what is happening here. You know, water molecule is OH and H is now added to here. So one of them is added at this point, the other one is added at this point to saturate this thing again. So here, this forms malate, and the enzyme that does this is fumarase enzyme. There is no equivalent generated, there is no reducing, there is no energy currency generated, so we don't care. Now malate is quickly converted back to oxaloacetate. And what is happening here now, and this is catalyzed by the enzyme malate dehydrogenase. Anytime you say dehydrogenase, it's going to use either FAD or NAD. NAD, any of them. So here NAD is now quickly reduced to this, whereas malate is now oxidized to oxaloacetate. And again, the enzyme that does this is the malate dehydrogenase in the last reaction. And this oxaloacetate generated now combines again with acetyl-CoA and the cycle continues. So this is the tricarboxylic acid cycle. So I'm going to circle this again because we generated another reducing equivalent again of NADH. So in taking stock of what we produce, so let's count. In breaking down just one molecule of acetyl-CoA, how many NADH do we produce? Let's count. we produce 1, 2, 3. So we produce 3 NADH in just one molecule of acetyl-CoA. What else was generated? Here we get to this place. 1 FADH was generated, 1 FADH2. Remember, all these guys will finally get to the electron transport chain. And look at here, GTP was produced, but the body cannot readily use GTP. It is easily converted to ATP. So what it simply means, 1 ATP was also generated. So these are the important notes you need to watch out for in tricarboxylic acid cycle when one acetyl-CoA molecule goes through. But assuming you are talking about glucose, now this is what happens when one molecule of a mole of acetyl-CoA goes in. Now remember, what about glucose? In glucose molecule, how many acetyl-CoA is generated? 2. Remember, glucose is broken down to glycerol 3-phosphate and dihydroacetone phosphate. Those two now continues the pathway. Although all the dihydroacetone phosphate is converted to glycerol 3-phosphate, everything that happens there will now begin to double. Remember we talked about this in glycolysis. The same thing happens here. So if it is coming from glycolysis, that means we are having 2 acetyl-CoA. So if we have 2 acetyl-CoA, if it is from glucose, from a glucose molecule, everything doubles. So what it means is that we'll be having 6 NADH produced, 2 FADH2 produced, and 2 ATP produced. And it's important to keep note of this because we're going to be using this to do what we call the ATP calculation or the ATP yield in citric acid cycle. So this is the citric acid cycle as it is. Now let's now go to regulation. Remember, anytime we talk about any pathway, we're going to talk about how it is regulated because enzymes or pathways are regulated according to the needs of the cell. Now again, the regulation of citric acid cycle involves mainly allosteric regulation. Now let's start. Now pyruvate is converted to acetyl-CoA because it's taking place in the mitochondria. Remember, look at what happens here. It is inhibited by ATP. Yes, because ATP is part of the product that is produced. Remember, at this point, it is produced at step 5. So it is acting as an allosteric inhibitor in this case, binding on it, or you can say feedback. Now acetyl-CoA too, which is the direct product of this, can also bind on this and inhibit it. So the red here is showing you steps that require either NADH or FAD. This is showing you the control point. This is showing you inhibition reaction. So now here, look at what happens. Like I said, is inhibited by ATP, acetyl-CoA, and all of which are product of this cycle. So this is what we simply call product inhibition, which are also a type of allosteric inhibition. Now acetyl-CoA, of course, combines with oxaloacetate to form citrate. This enzyme here, the enzyme here is the citrate synthase. Remember, this is the enzyme involved there is pyruvate dehydrogenase. The enzyme involved there, the citrate synthase, is inhibited by ATP, NADH, and succinyl-CoA as well. And citrate. All these guys are all products of this, and this is seen as both product inhibition, feedback inhibition, and allosteric inhibition as well, because the enzyme here has the binding site for all these things which modulate and reduce its strength. That's why we say it is inhibition. Again, we go to the next one. There's also another control at this point. Isocitrate is converted to alpha-ketoglutarate. And the enzyme here is isocitrate dehydrogenase. Now, this enzyme is inhibited by ATP, NADH, all of which are product of the citric acid cycle, and is stimulated by ADP and NAD. So NAD plus is one of the substrates. So you can say this is what? You can call this a feed-forward inhibition because the oxidized is entering at this point. So it's the kind of feed forward coming to help this stimulate this guy. And ADP is stimulated because ADP signifies low energy state of the body. That's exactly what it is. So ATP means using it for energy, but ADP is the low energy charge. So ADP and NADH does stimulate isocitrate dehydrogenase. Now, alpha-ketoglutarate to this again, remember again, this reaction, again, when you convert from alpha-ketoglutarate to succinyl-CoA, again, it's catalyzed by the enzyme alpha-ketoglutarate dehydrogenase. Again, the enzyme is inhibited by ATP, NADH, and succinyl-CoA, which are all allosteric modulators as well. So this 3 control point is what regulates the rate of citric acid cycle, and that depends on the metabolic state of the body. Now, the metabolic state of the body, like I said, is what engenders how much regulation that happens. Now, when a cell is at the resting state, if a cell is at resting state, what it means is that it doesn't use a lot of energy. So the need for energy is very low. What it means, ATP is not used that much. That means the high ATP and low ADP levels. What that simply means is that if you do the ATP-ADP ratio, it's going to be high. And again, there will be high NADH, because anytime there is that oxidation, you are generating the reduced equivalent of this coenzyme. So there will be high NAD and low, the high reduced form of NAD and the low oxidized form of it, which simply means that this is going to be high again. This ratio is going to be high when cells is at rest. You don't need much energy, so you're going to have surplus. Now, when the cell is actively metabolized in a highly metabolic state, what happens? It needs more energy than a resting cell. So what it means is that the moment ATP is generated, it is being used. So the cell is going to always run low on ATP and high on ADP. So the ratio of this ATP to ADP is going to be low. And then what that simply means is that since you're running low on ATP, and to generate ATP, you have to also generate these guys at the same time. What that simply means is that the ratio of the reduced to the oxidized form of NAD is going to be what? Low. And this ratio is going to be low as well. And this is actually what controls the metabolic rate of the cell, depending on what is happening. Particularly if someone is actively exercising like the sprinters, what it means, you need ATP immediately. So as soon as those ATP is being generated in glycolysis and then other electron transport chain, they're being used immediately, and you're going to always be running low. And that is why at the point you find out that when the sprinters keep running at the point, they begin to get into the stage of oxygen depth, whereby they begin to have this muscle ache, because they're using ATP more than they can generate at that point in time, because the cell is very active. At this point in time, we'll be coming to an end of this lecture. Thank you again for listening, and do have a wonderful day ahead of you.